Welcome to another episode of Planning Phase Syndicate. Just kidding, folks. It's a Planning Phase Syndicate, spoilers intended, episode tonight. We are going to be talking about your one and only Ashoka, the show. I guess this is the weird way to talk. It's Ashoka.
Just
we're going to
Star
talk
Wars Ahsoka. Yeah.
Star Wars Ahsoka. Is there another Ahsoka? I don't think there's another Ahsoka.
No.
But tonight we're going to be talking our Universe Extended, which is essentially where JJ and I talk about anything and everything Star Wars related that has absolutely nothing to do with X-Wing, though we sprinkle a few little bits in here and there for your viewing pleasure. With that being said, joining me on mic tonight is my good friend JJ, gonna crush him at Nova, Lions fan, Gridiron. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm actually packing for Nova as we speak. I'm just trying to get my list ready, trying to get all my tokens ready. I purchased the SSP Vader just for that one card. Then I got to try to sell it. So yeah, excited, man.
Well, that's good. I had to drive out to Lansing today for an all-day in-person work meeting. And you know what the number one question that they had today was from all of our teams that are connected together?
Why
do we have to go back
this?
into the office?
Exactly. Why are we all here? Why can't we just do this virtually? Exactly.
So that was good. It was nice seeing everybody in person. I won't lie. I will tell you what, the meeting went a million times faster because you could tell who's paying attention and who's not. They're just sitting there, and if they aren't paying attention, you almost immediately know. It's just known. It's a known quantity. So.
Yeah, I used to run Vassal in the background whenever we had those meetings, and I would just play X-Wing on Vassal back in the day. Jeez.
Well, enough work talk. I've had enough work to save a million years.
Same here, man. Let's get some Ahsoka talk going on here. So we set up a little guide here, which screenshots of some of the episode here, just to kind of guide us through the conversation as the episode progresses here. So we'll start off with the first episode that aired last week. It was a two-part intro for the series where we got two episodes, and I gotta say they were actually really strong. They were great. I actually enjoyed them a lot. The very first thing that we got introduced was these two new, I guess, antagonists technically, which is Balin and Shin, who are these dark side users, I would call them, because they're definitely not Sith. And they go into this New Republic prison transport, which is transporting a high value target there, and they get to show off their abilities very, very early. And we get Balin being interpreted by Ray Stevenson, the late Ray Stevenson. And I got to say, after seeing his initial dialogue, and the way he just generally carries himself, he looks like a light side Count Dooku almost character. And I want to see more of his character develop and talk and stuff like that, because he just seems like a really interesting character. What was your first impression?
So I agree with you. I don't think I don't get the Count Dooku vibe as much as I get who's the guy from the very first Jedi video game we played. It's not Jedi Survivor, it's Jedi I can't remember it. What's that video game with the EA Sports one?
The Force Unleashed?
No. It's the new game with the redhead kid.
Oh, I know what you're talking
about. It's Gaelic, something like that.
Yeah. Gaelic. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Jedi. No, it's not. No. Fallen Order. No.
Yes,
it is Fallen Order. Yeah.
So in that game, I believe it's Gaelic. I'll look it up real quick. But essentially, that's the guy. That's who he reminds me of. Is like a little bit, chubbier or maybe a little bit older Gaelic. That's who it reminds me of completely. And it's the guy that you have to fight. I guess spoiler alert. but it's the guy you have to fight towards the end at on Darth Maul, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's who I see. Cal Kestis is the lead. Jesus, I don't know what's wrong with me.
So much work. That's why.
Um, no, it's Taran Malicos. That's who it is.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Yeah.
Yes, that is who it is. So that's who this reminds me of. Honestly, I didn't see the Count Dooku. I see Count Dooku as like more boxy, a way too much political, and like if you I don't know if you ever read the Count Dooku book,
Yeah.
but if you've read you could kind of hear the snippets in his voice even when he was like a young Jedi, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. So then we go into the scene here. Now, one of the things that kind of like bothered me for the scene is that, we get the captain of the New Republic ship there that gets this transmission saying that it's a Jedi shuttle that's coming in to dock with them, and he's like, "Oh well, I'm gonna go greet them to see if they're. I'm gonna call their bluff and go meet them." And I'm like, you're a captain. You got people you could delegate that to. Your job is to maintain control of the ship, not go meet the potential people who are going to kill you. Like, like
It's a
what kind of
naivety.
competence? It's incompetence, bro. Like, and of course, naturally, this guy ends up getting killed, and Shin displays her lightsaber skills where she mows down a bunch of New Republic guards. Heads to the bridge where she handily dispatches everybody, and they escape with their prisoner. And we get this little glimpse on her, seeing like the little Padawan braid on her, just showing that she is Balin's Padawan. And it's actually kind of interesting, right? Because these are obviously dark side users. They're not quite Sith, but they still follow the traditions of the Jedi, right? With her having that braid, obviously that's very symbolic of the relationship between a Jedi master and an apprentice on how they work, which is very different with how the Sith do it.
Yes. And I think I don't know, like see, this is where it goes into, like technically speaking, right? When they before they created the rule of two, there was lots of Sith, right? And they
Mhm.
were essentially just like the Jedi. They had apprentices, they did trainings, they did all those other things. So, like, could this just be like a rehashing of, how they used to do things? Or do you think this is more of a rule of two type thing?
I'm not sure. I think maybe this is probably Balin trying to create his own order, similar to the Jedi Order, but not fully invested in the dark side. Because obviously, the way that they're working so far, and we see through the conversation that he has with Elsbeth that she essentially hired them, so they're working like mercenaries,
Yeah.
and they're not quite invested in the whole plot to actually bring back Thrawn, but they're there because they're hired muscle essentially, and they're intrigued by what's going on, and that's the sense that I get from them.
Yeah, and I think you're probably right in that aspect, but I don't know. It just feels so much like the Sith to me in how they handle each other. But I guess we can get to that later as we kind of move through that episode.
Mhm. So as we move on, we find ourselves back with our main protagonist, which is Ahsoka Tano. She's exploring a planet here, and she finds herself inside of a Tomb Raider scene where she has to solve a puzzle in order to unlock a treasure. And she finds essentially what seems to be like a kind of like a little hollow ball. That has coordinates, but she finds herself interrupted, and she comes face to face with a squad of HK droids, which I believe are hunter killer droids. And we get this beautiful shot here with these droids here, and I just love the touch of equipping these droids with the cape that kind of like flows in the wind as they're like staring each other down, about to start the battle. I think this was actually really great cinematography. I really enjoyed this particular piece, just showing the starting battle here and just seeing Ahsoka's battle prowess and how she handled herself in combat.
Yeah, and I think that's, I agree with you on that aspect. It was weird because I didn't understand what those droids were. They look like Magna Guards, right? Like somebody
Yeah,
repainted them and made them
and even
skinnier.
when they light up their staff, it has the like that
Yep.
static sound that the Magna Guards had, and I'm like, oh snap! I'm like, are these like upgraded Magna Guards? Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and so that's, that always is going to be the question, right? Is it, is it something that is that or not? I don't know if we're going to ever find out, but that was like my first question immediately was, are they, um specifically Magna Guards, or is this like a new model of droid? And oh, do these can they can they fly ships? That's what I want to know. I just want to know, can they fly ships?
So like this gives me a very very separatist vibe, right? And considering that Balin was a Jedi during the Clone Wars, because we know that he knew Anakin Skywalker and he is aware of Ahsoka Tano, like it almost feels like he reserved a part of the separatist tech to keep it in reserve to help him deploy for particular missions where he needs to extract like an object or try to assassinate somebody and just use that as an extension of his services. That's how this feels to me.
Yeah. And at the time, I don't know if we don't know that they're from Balin, right?
I believe so because they were deployed out of the ship in a later episode.
Yeah, but in this scene, we don't know. We just know
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
being hunted, and we know she's going after. You didn't tell them, but she's going after a cube, some sort of a cube that is a connection to hyperspace, or they don't explain at this point. They don't explain what it is, but it's a cube that's going to help her travel or see through time. Which then made me think of the world between worlds. Right, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that.
right. Yeah, exactly. So after this battle scene, we find that the droids decide to self-destruct and cause like a massive fireball that basically wipes that whole area, and we get to see Huang again, who is the training droid from the old Clone Wars days that were training the younglings on how to create their lightsabers and such. And I apparently forgot to put the picture in there, but it was a nice it was a nice thing to see that particular character from Clone Wars come up to be that companion for Ahsoka, because Ahsoka, if you haven't seen the Clone Wars, specifically the later seasons of Clone Wars, Ahsoka did walk away from the Jedi Order and from Anakin Skywalker, like stopping to participate in part of the Jedi Order because she became disillusioned with it, and now she is traveling the galaxy with essentially the history of the Jedi Order that's reserved with this droid that helped teach all these younglings how to start their first steps in the Force. So it was interesting to see her choose him as her companion for what she gets to do. Fast forward, we get to end up over in Lothal, where they have a opening ceremony. And let me add in a photo here that I forgot to add in. And we see ourselves with a dedication ceremony here, where we get to see a very familiar face here, and it is writer Anzari, who is delivering a speech doing the dedication for this mural. You can scroll up, I put it above. And it was awesome to see writer Zari come back to life. And to his left there, we get the kid from Rebels season one, I believe, who was the Imperial cadet that Ezra ended up that helped Ezra escape from the Imperial Academy during one of their missions. And now he's all grown up and he's a senator now, representing one of the systems in the New Republic. So it was great to see this little piece of lore from Rebels come into live action.
Yeah. And I think if you look at it, that the writer thing was different for me. I mean, he's dressed a little bit differently. He's definitely older, and he's got like the full like saw beard. Like he's got like
Yeah.
the poofy hair and the saw beard. That's what it reminded me of. It's like, did you hang out with Saw too long? Y'all hanging out a little bit too long together.
Exactly, yeah. And then they mean to bring up Sabine to kind of honor her for the dedication of this particular mural. And of course, Sabine is nowhere to be found, so Ryder sends out the Spectre group to go and find her and locate her. And lo and behold, we have her riding out of Lothal in a speeder, and we get a beautiful shot there of an E-wing just flying us alongside of her. Now, the best part of this was the call sign for the pilot, who is Spectre 20, which means that they've continued the tradition of calling all the pilots that are in, at least in this area, are part of the squadron, part of the original call signs that the Phoenix team originally had when they started their cell on Lothal, continuing the tradition of calling each other Spectre. So that was a nice little touch that they added on there. And we have a whole sequence where they're trying to get her to stop so that way she can come back and go to the celebration. And we get this awesome scene where she gets to basically escape and go right through the E-wings and make it out to her communications tower.
Yeah, and I think here is a big one, right? You know, like you see the E-wing, and so I need to know, like, because the E-wing has never appeared in standard, like, non-legacy type stuff, right? And I think the question becomes like, why now? Like, why all of a sudden are we getting an E-wing appearance? Like, I mean, how many other ships like are in the books that are not in any of these shows or movies? So why are we getting an E-wing? And what did we not see at Exegol? An E-wing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, my theory on this is that they actually use the remnants of Thrawn's TIE Defender base to design and create the E-wing, which would be actually really, really interesting for them to later show up and become part of the pivotal battle to fight off TIE Defenders on live action. It would be really great to see that happen on the live screen.
I don't know if we're gonna get to see live action Defenders. That'd be crazy. That's
Maybe not in
that's
Ahsoka,
crazy.
but in the movie that's coming out in a few years from now, maybe part of this the big battle that we'll probably see. I would hope to see at least a squadron of E-wings go in and fight some TIE defenders. That would be really great for live action.
Fair enough.
And then we got another photo here just showing the side profile of the E-wing here, and it looks really clean, really nice. I love that the design of them bringing it into live action. Just seeing that nice canopy that's nice and open, and not have that really ugly, obtrusive gun just being right on top of the canopy there. And it definitely shares some of the designs of an X-wing. You can tell how it has like that front nose part, but just having that bigger engine and cannons on the side, it's like a really nice side profile shot
You
of
you know
the.
what it looks like though, right? Like it really looks like the first attack shuttle from the
Yes,
Ghost. That's what it looks
yeah,
like to me. That's what it's always looked like. I love them. I own like 3 of them in X-Wing miniatures game, but you know, like, so like for me I love those little models, but I don't know. We'll see. They seem like a ship that's never appeared anywhere else, and somehow miraculously, you know, we get to see it now, you know.
yeah, exactly. So moving on from this part here, we get to go forward in the series where Ahsoka has a conversation with Hera, where she tells her to reach out to Sabine to help her essentially try to decode the sphere that she gets, and through some trial, Sabine is able to essentially crack the code that the knights that was on this, and it reveals a path going from the current galaxy that we know, going into a separate galaxy where it is believed where Grand Admiral Thrawn and Ezra traveled to at the end of season 4 of Rebels, which was actually a very big revelation, because originally, what we originally thought was the that they traveled into the unknown regions, which would have been on the far, I guess, if you're looking at it at a map, would be to the far western side of the galaxy, which was originally closed off because of a natural phenomenon that occurred in that area. But now we're traveling to a whole nother galaxy. I mean, this is huge, right? Because this just opens up the lore for so many other things to exist in that area, right?
So now the question and I don't want to jump ahead to episode 3 yet, but I think one of the questions, I have with this revelation was, I don't think when we in Rebels we don't see Thrawn specifically picking and choosing where they went, right? It did not say, here you go, we're going to choose this and you're going to go there. So the question becomes, how intentional was that location picked? Was it random? And if it is in another galaxy, how in God's green earth do we get there? And I think, that begs the question, where is Thrawn from? Right? Like, is Thrawn and their species genuinely from like the outer rim area, or are they in a whole nother galaxy and it's just not described appropriately in the books?
Right, exactly. So I mean, it's definitely interesting, at least lore wise, because at least this becomes like the next thing that could essentially this could be a narrative point for the future, especially post Rise of Skywalker, where we can find our next big threat to the galaxy. I think that this is essentially what this is setting up, is for the next big bad to come from that galaxy. Maybe they pull from Legends again and bring out the Yus Vong, which were immune to Force, which would be really interesting to see that dynamic come up now,
So
since there's been so much buildup of Force users, to have a natural enemy that are immune to the effects of the Force.
okay, so we're just gonna go full spoiler till, and I will apologize to you because I know you haven't read all the books, but I don't feel I should have to wait to have a conversation with you on a book that's like 2 or 3 years old. So, um,
Okay.
if you've read any of the High Republic books, like, so
Mhm.
okay, so there's two things I want to say. So first off, there's the Grisk, right?
Yeah.
That are the enemies in the Thrawn society that we know are not defeated and we know are coming back. And I can't remember his name because I haven't read those books in like 2 years now. But there was a big bad that was, manipulating the Grisk from afar. And the prevalent theory is that was Palpatine or a Palpatine clone that was doing that. That's how they make it sound in the Thrawn books, right? So
Okay.
I understand the logic of, and I can't remember his name. We'll have to look it up in a minute. I did not come prepared for Thrawn discussion, I guess. But so I understand like having another galaxy because I think it opens up the door to have these other things. But at the same token, there is so much unexplored territory just with the Chiss. They don't need to do any of this stuff. And then now we have a whole High Republic series, and we know there is at least one show, I think it's a show, coming that will deal slightly with the High Republic,
Is
right?
that the Acolyte, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will tell you that there's two sets of High Republic books. They have adult ones and then young adult ones. And I won't lie and say that all of them are so like you should just read every one of these, but they are extremely interesting because they deal with an enemy called the Nihil. I'm sorry. I'm excited because I was trying to finish up my book today on the way to and from work because I'm never in the car anymore. Anyway, so there's this Nihil threat, and they are a extreme pirate group, and they do all these weird drugs that make them crazy.
Glitter stem. Yes.
It's not glitter stem though. That's not what they call it. But sure, I don't think it is glitter stem because glitters. I don't know. We'd have to go back and actually look at where glitter stem was created. Though they do talk about spice a little bit in like reference to some of that. Like it's not spice called in the books, but it's kind of one of those things where you can kind of allude and say, "Yep, somebody found this ahead of time." Right now, the Nihil are this big bad enemy, right? And it's led by the Marcian Ro. And Marcian Ro is leading, and throughout all these books and all the stories, like essentially there's a vengeful piece against the Jedi. Now, I haven't read the last two that have come out. That's where I'm at right now. I'm on the third one before that. But the fourth one before that, there was it was an origin like book. Like it's set even before the High Republic per se, like the current storyline that the High Republic is tackling. It was set before that, and it's essentially there's these little creatures, and if they come in contact with you, They turn you to dust. But they only do it to Force users.
Interesting.
And it's insane. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, this is it's a revolutionary piece inside of Star Wars because we've never had anything before. And what it's doing, and I don't know how much I should spoil, but what essentially it's doing is it's sucking all the Force out of the people.
So it eats the midi-chlorians
Sure.
inside of the
They
person.
they really do not like that terminology, so they don't call it that. But yes, that's like, to some extent it's doing something like that, but it doesn't affect normal people per se right now. It's
Gotcha.
only affecting Jedi. And it's not something where like the Jedi have to be eaten. It doesn't eat you. It just like comes in contact with you, and it's like a disease, and then you just start turning into stone, and then the stone turns into dust. And we find out in that the fourth book from the current one that essentially, I don't know where, they don't know where these came from, but like Marchion Rose, like origins and all of that, where they were one of the original, um they have one of the original Pathfinders, right? And that's what they call them in the Thrawn book. So they're connecting some of this Chiss stuff without actually talking about just people, and they're utilizing the same terminology. They had Pathfinders, people that could find hyperspace lanes before they were mapped out. And Lor Senteca and the Sentenka family, that to some extent, that's the original. Marchion Rose, like grandmother, is a Senteca. And so we don't get a lot of Senteca discussions in any of the newer, books or movies. It's kind of like they're brought up and they're a smaller plot point, but they've never had their own full set on series. In the High Republic, we get that.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
so to bring it all back around, right? There already exists and had written before this, like a whole species that is, using Force immune animals or creatures to murder Jedis. Which is crazy because it almost feels like we should rewrite the original trilogy, because can you imagine if Palpatine had these things? Like, I mean, it wouldn't even been a question. Like, here you go. Have one of these stupid little animals. But
Yeah.
yeah, so bringing it all back around, like, I understand the logic of like creating us a new galaxy, but we have some of these other things. Now, if they can tie the High Republic piece to the new galaxy, like, what if those species came from this galaxy? What if they were part of that whole other, like, dominant species that just so does not happen to have, the Force, or they evolved to the point where the Force was too strong inside of, society. Therefore, now we have these malice things that are Force resistant or murdering Force people.
That would be actually really interesting. I mean, they definitely are laying the groundwork to introduce a lot of those threads. It would be awesome to see threats that are being like fleshed out now in the High Republic to come back as the next evolution of that particular like threat. Especially with the rebuild of the Jedi Order and the death of Palpatine. Hopefully, finally, it'll be interesting to see, especially since we're expected to have a new Rey trilogy that's coming out, and see what the next big bad or the next big challenge for Rey and her legacy would be for her lifetime there. So yeah. So we finally get to see the duel that they sort of teased in the beginning from the trailers between Sabine and Shin, and we get to see Sabine take out Ezra's lightsaber, and now she's forced to defend herself using all the tricks and all the knowledge that was basically beat into her by Kanan and Ezra during Rebels, and we get to see her. I think my favorite part of it was the fact that she defaults into the ready stance that Ezra was trying to teach her in the beginning during the Trials of the Darksaber episode of Rebels, and it's really great. Natasha, the actress that portrays Sabine, she nailed it. She nailed that stance perfectly, and how Sabine did it in Rebels as she prepares to fight Shin Hati for essentially the device that she helped unlocked, and we get a nice duel here, and it was very interesting because you can clearly see that during this fight this is a very different lightsaber fight. It kind of reminded me more of the fight between Kylo Ren and Finn from Episode 7, because Finn is not attuned to the Force at all in that fight, and he's basically trying to use his physicality to try to win this fight. And Sabine very similarly tries to win the fight using her knowledge, her muscle memory from all her training that she had from Ezra and Kanan, and just trying to beat her that way. Whereas Shin is kind of using the Force to augment her speed and her prowess when she's fighting and doing this duel here. And it was a very interesting scene to see how they portrayed that.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting. Like, I don't know, it's a little different. Like, and so this is where JG and I are disagreeing on whether Sabine is force sensitive or not. And like, spoiler alert, there is stuff in episode 3 where they talk about it, and JJ he's trying to not lose 2 bets in 1 year, is what it is. He's already lost the bet with the Giants losing to the Lions, which he said never would happen ever. Which, by the way, your hat's in the mail, just so you know. And it's a different color than the one you're wearing, and has a big lion on it. I couldn't get the lion head though anymore.
Oh damn! That
like
sucks.
I think that was a fake one, because like I had it in my cart and it's gone, and I tried to find the company that made it, and they don't exist on Amazon anymore. I can't find it, so I don't know what happened. I think it was spam bullshit, but anyway, so yeah, it's interesting to see how like they, because like traditionally we were taught you can't hold a lightsaber unless you have the Force, right? And then a lot of that changed with the dark saber, and changed with some of the legends type discussions, that there were some books that people held lightsabers without having to. And I don't think in the original trilogy, I'm trying to think of who had a lightsaber. I don't think Han. Yeah, Han was the only one, but again, Han also made the run in how many parsecs, right? So he might be force sensitive and just a dick. He's just a dick all around. But
so look, I mean, they very clearly have defined it, several times, and I don't want to go too deep in the. I'll tell you what I mean by that, okay? And we're not going to go too deep in this conversation because there's more stuff that comes up later on related to this, but essentially what they've talked about during the Clone Wars is that the Force resides in everybody. However, it takes talent and it takes training for people to develop that connection to the Force in order for them to wield it like a Jedi does. And while Sabine may certainly feel aspects of the Force, she's very much like a Han Solo character, where she maybe not intuitively uses the Force, or at least purposefully, but the Force still resides in her because it resides in all living beings. She just doesn't have the talent, and she does not have the training to use it. So, even Kwong, when talking to her in the following episode, tells her that her abilities are like subpar. Like, she would never be considered.
Now you're spoiling episode 3.
Episode 2. It was episode 2. But yeah, but anyway, but yeah,
3.
let's not go too deep down the rabbit hole on that one. So
I'm just saying, I think you're wrong, and I think they're clearly not addressing this issue because of people like us that want to debate it. There's a reason to their madness, and there's a reason behind some of this stuff. And Sabine has held a lightsaber before. She did very well in her training comparatively. And yes, you got to think, like, the discussion in the past has always been you can't train them unless they're really young, right? It's weird. It's actually a very brainwashing technique thing. Like, that's why they struggled with Anakin. There was arguments about training Anakin for a lot. That's all over. That's all over the old trilogies, right? And in the Clone Wars,
you could say the same about Luke Skywalker. I mean,
yes, and they argued the same thing too. They did the same thing. Now, it doesn't mean he can't be, and doesn't mean he shouldn't be, and didn't mean he might have more talent than somebody like Sabine, but it does mean that has happened. And so they're bringing this up as a discussion point, because in Rebels, she doesn't hold the lightsaber for it's not like a thing. Oh no, like there is 30 seconds, if that, at the end of Rebels, where he gives her the lightsaber and says, "You need to carry on for me," which is a theme in this, by the way. with her and Ezra. And that's one of the pictures you miss, because that's one of the things that comes up is, and we see in episode 2 with flashbacks, but like she's plagued by living in his shadow because he made the ultimate sacrifice she can't make. You know, even though they think he's alive, and now he's an inquisitor. But
no, he's not an inquisitor. He is not an inquisitor. No, we'll just have that conversation for episode 2. But just to end the fight here, Jin does a beautiful spinning parring maneuver, and then goes for slightly above Sabine's liver, and fails to hit any critical organs, causing Sabine to fall, still with enough strength to fight her back with wild swings. And then the episode ends where she collapses right in front of Ahsoka as she arrives to help out in the battle.
Yeah, which I thought was a weird point as an ending piece to this episode, because I mean, we see her, right? She shows up in trailers with her haircut, and we didn't see her haircut this whole episode. So like, this is kind of like, I don't know. This to me seems silly and ridiculous that we had to have this piece of it.
Yeah, I know. It's like they put in a cliffhanger and they've already spoiled, what's going to happen already. So I think it was just more for an effect, or for the people who decided not to watch anything, so that way they didn't get spoiled. But yeah, absolutely.
So, well, all right. That concludes episode 30 for us. Oh, look, I have your picture up here still. Episode 30 for us, for the Universe Extended from Planning Phase Syndicate. Tune in next week, because we will be covering more of the Ahsoka show. And since Thrawn is Tanner's absolute favorite character, and Ahsoka is probably a close second favorite character of mine, the episodes will always be way too long comparatively, because I have lots of commentary. And I got to come up with a new bet if I'm correct that Sabine gets to use the Force by the end of the season, and JJ has to. We got to do something, because I already won my one bet, though I had to pay for it. This time we're going to make clear guidelines that if I win the bet, I'm not shelling out any goddamn cash this time, because I had to shell out the cash for the new hat, which hopefully he wears until the end of time. But with that being said, thank you all so much. We will be back with another spoiler episode of the Universe Extended. Thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you on the flippity flop.